Hey, welcome back everyone. Thanks for joining in. Got some new footage here I wanted to put out. We had stayed at a couple campgrounds, state park campgrounds in North Carolina after leaving the Outer Banks. And the first one we stopped at was called Goose Creek State Park. Nice campground, small campground. Also, I'm sure the park was there, but the campground was fairly new, and I believe that the staff at the front, when we checked in, had told us that it was about 5 years old, and you could tell. The campground was very new, and usually that translates nice, and it was. And we had full hookups when we were there, and I looked around. I think they all were, besides the tent sites. I think all the RV lots or RV sites were full hookups, which is really nice. So 50 amp service. And usually for you guys who don't go camping, when there's 50 amp service, usually you're going to have a plug for a 50 amp, a plug for a 30 amp, and a plug for a 20 amp or a regular wall receptacle from your house, a couple plugs. Now they don't all add up. Usually they're rated for 50 or 60 amps total, but you know, depending on your RV and what you have, you usually can plug into that. But nice campgrounds. This Goose Creek State Park is located 34 miles southeast of Greenville, North Carolina. There's wetlands, and then the Pamlico River, I think is what it's called, is nearby. So they had the campground sites, and then they had a primitive section too. We didn't really venture back there, but when you pull right into the campground, if you go straight, there's the tent sites. And primitive meaning essentially nothing, right? There's no utilities at all. You just go back there, you set up your tent, and you can use the shower houses and so forth. Bathrooms, of course, to do your business inside the campground. But there's also a lot of hiking trails. I guess there's like 8.5 miles of hiking trails throughout there. Fishing seems to be popular. There's also some historic lumber sites throughout the area, and we saw some of that advertised in the nature center itself. Of course, like I said, showers, bathhouse. They sell firewood with the host campers, the site host. And I guess there was a boat ramp. We didn't go over that part. And then, of course, they had a visitor center / nature center. But we just stayed for one night at Goose Creek. We were actually scheduled to be there maybe 3 nights, maybe 4. But when we were out in the Outer Banks, after leaving Oregon Inlet, we booked over at that KOA. We decided we wanted to stay out there a little bit longer, not really knowing what Goose Creek was. We just knew it was further inland. And we kind of wanted to stay on the shore a little long. But we liked the campground. I definitely would stay there longer if we would have been booked longer and didn't have plans afterwards to head to Myrtle Beach. Or I'm sorry, head to Carolina Beach and then into Myrtle Beach. But the sites were open to the sky, which is great for us because, number one, we need Starlink and use Starlink, so the unobstructed sky really is useful. We don't have to worry about solar because we had full hookups, but otherwise, if we're not in full hookups, having full sky helps with that as well. Paved roads. The campsites were gravel. The roads were paved. And a lot of state parks throughout the states are kind of similar. Some nicer than others, but the paved roads was nice. Smooth for scooters. My son was able to ride a scooter around. Bicycling, real easy. I guess you could probably roller skate if you rollerblade, whatever the kids are doing these days, roller skating, if you really wanted to. But they also had some nice little cabins for rent. You'll see I got some video of this. Everything, like I said, looked brand new. The shower house was very nice. They call it I can't remember what the staff had told me. They call it the Palace or something like that. But the shower house was extremely nice. The restrooms were extremely nice. I would say out of every state or national park we've been to, this is by far the nicest restroom and the nicest shower house. Part of that's contributed to it being 5 years old, but it's very nice and very well built. I suspect it'll stay that way for a while with the upkeep and a little bit of maintenance. And then they had a few places around. They had a dog parking signs. My son thought that was funny, but you could tie up your dog for I think it said like 10-15 minutes, to go into the shower house. Or there was even one over at the nature center, the visitor center. It said the same thing, 10 minute, but not many people were there. We didn't see it. We didn't use it other than just to be funny with my son. And then I mentioned earlier, so they have firewood for sale. In some state parks, they have full camp stores and and this and that, and usually the bigger ones. And then they have kind of quite the operation. Where some of the smaller state parks, it's the camp hosts that are kind of running things, and a camp host is someone that's staying there in their RV for a certain period of time, sometimes a season, sometimes monthly or quarterly, and they're there to help out with the chores, and some being more than others, and then some of them sell firewood for the park, and that's what happened here. They didn't have a camp store. It's not a very big campground, and it was just one site hosted, I believe, that was there for the sites. And we did see some wildlife. I think the first night we got there, took a walk and we saw some white-tailed deer not far off the driveway, and they definitely weren't scared of humans, of course, being protected on the state park. And then right before you get to the campground, they have the visitor center, or the nature center, we usually will call them generically. It's a short walk from the campground down the road, or bike ride, or whatever you wish to do, and then there's some trails off the path. And they were closed the night we got there, but we were able to attend the next morning before checkout or on our way out. I think we stopped through with the camper. And they have tons of taxidermy animals, tons of stuff on the walls, on the ceilings, hanging up on all different types of animals that you would see in the area. Really cool, a lot of cool exhibits. I thought very educational. We spent quite a bit of time there with my son, and nice little setup. It wasn't busy at all. I mean, there was a couple other RVs when we were there. You might see in some of the footage I have, but there was no one in the visitor center. We didn't really pass a whole lot of people out when we were walking. Every once in a while you'd see a camper pull in or out, but it was very low key, kind of off the beaten path, I understand, but it worked out for us with our travel plans. But I would definitely go back there. It's one of the nicest state park campgrounds in terms of amenities, facilities. I guess when I say amenities, with the shower house and so forth, and the hookups and everything being new, it was just really nice. I definitely go back. Now, we left Goose Creek after one day, and we headed to Carolina Beach State Park, and the campground there, right in Carolina Beach, North Carolina. So it's tucked away in a spot it's got pine trees, marshes, right on the Cape Fear River nearby. And I believe they had, what I saw was like 79 campsites, and they were pretty roomy. And state parks, not all, but a lot of state parks do a pretty good job with that, spacing you out, versus maybe a private campground that wants to cram everybody in that you might have seen. But they had spots for tents, of course, as well, and RVs. And I think there was also some, what they call camper cabins, multiple person cabins. I didn't get into looking all those up. I think it's just back to my point, and I try to reiterate this in some of the videos, is there's a lot of places that you can go even if you don't have an RV. Whether it be a KOA at the Outer Banks or just some of these state parks, they usually have cabins or yurts or something for rent that you can still enjoy the fun and go and have some time away from home and do some camping. So maybe something to think about even if you don't have a camper. So we had a large pull-through site with full hookups. It was kind of a little unique, some of the overgrowth. You technically could loop around, but we wanted to back in a little bit, kind of be closer to the water and sewer hookup. But it wasn't a big deal. We had plenty of space, more space than we needed, I would say. And they did have a gate access at the entrance of the campground. And when we checked in, we were asked if we were leaving to be back by 9 p.m. And this never happened to us at a state park, so it was funny. And essentially they were locking us in. Now I'm sure there was a number to call or some way to get out, but they were locking us in for our safety, evidently. But either way, we didn't have to go anywhere after 9, so what a big deal. But yeah, so the sites were fairly unique, like I said, and unique being different. Each one was a little bit different. They were pretty wooded, although we were still able, luckily, this site to find opening at the front of the driveway to get us a little bit of Starlink coverage. There was a little bit of obstruction, but we were able to function, which was nice. And then some sites, they did not have sewer, and they were just electrical only, and I think there was some that were just no hookups at all. But they had water spigots throughout the park, and of course they have a dump station when you head out, which it was pretty normal. Of course, for state parks, you're always going to have somewhere to dump your tanks. Anyway, but the bathhouses were useful. We didn't need them with full hookups. Who does use the bathhouses or the shower houses? I'd say, even people with full hookups, if the shower is occupied and they want to split up the time, or someone who's there camping that doesn't have full hookups, but they don't want to fill up their gray tanks with the shower water and so forth. But They were there, seemed clean. They were old. They definitely weren't a new building by any means, but they were very well taken care of. And I can't say that about every bathhouse, shower house that we encounter. And yeah, so they had that nature center, large nature center at the front. And we always try to hit these up as long as the timing works out and they're not closed or some kind of special occasion. But the nature/visitor center at the beginning, and they had a lot of carnivorous plant exhibits. And that North Carolina, if you don't know that, in this part of North Carolina, they're pretty famous for carnivorous plants. And North Carolina is actually the only place where the Venus flytrap grows in nature, and I'll talk a little bit about that more about this garden that we attended after this park. So they had a lot of Venus flytrap information, they had a lot of exhibits, picture plants, so forth. And then off the back of the nature center, there's this bog trail behind there, a small bog trail with some carnivorous plants nearby. We were able to find, so they had pitcher plants pretty prevalent, and then some small sections of Venus flytraps right there off the bog. So if you go to the nature center and you want to see a Venus flytrap right away, they're out back. And then they have statues and so forth throughout the building talking about the Venus flytraps. And then fortunately for me, about less than a mile away from the park, I had an afternoon I went over and I was able to spray off the truck from being at the Outer Banks. We were so peppered that it was due for some cleanup right nearby, like less than a mile. And the wrap on the truck is actually, because if you know anything about the Cybertrucks, they come in a stainless silver from the factory, so it's wrapped, and it's what they call a color PPF, or a paint protection film, but it cleans up real easy, fortunately enough, especially with the amount of grime and bugs that we are being on the road so much. And then they had some trails at the park. You could walk, hiking trails. One of the most popular ones that we found there at Carolina Beach was what they call the Flytrap Trail. I mean, per the website and some of the reviews and so forth, to go out there and you see Venus flytraps on this trail. And it wasn't a very long loop. It was less than a mile. But so we of course went to do that. Short trail, easy walk. There was some boardwalk and some dirt sand pass section with some small lookouts over some of the popular areas or where you expected to go find what these carnivorous plants might be growing there. And yeah, I think they should rename the trail the Pitcher Plant Trail. We saw all kinds of pitcher plants, tons of pitcher plants. Did not see any fly traps at all, unfortunately. But they also have a marina at this park, so if you're into boating or fishing or something like that, you can take advantage of it. This had a marina with a boat ramp and the brackish water of Cape Fear River. This is where the marina store / camp store is located. This isn't uncommon when there's water access. They'll have like one main store usually by the water and call it the marina store. They sell merchandise, snacks. They had bait and tackle there for sale for the fishermen. There's also a fuel pump, fuel station out front for the boats coming in. They had kayak rentals outside, and they had a little beach area. Mostly fishing, I would say, was taking place, at least while we were there. We went there a couple times. And fishermen off the beach. I don't know if a lot of people enjoy swimming in the brackish waters here. You can't see a whole lot with the Cape Fear River. I heard rumors, we knew like coming in from doing some reviews that they had alligators. Well, we didn't see any. We talked with the lady who was working at the marina store, and she said, yeah, they had an alligator there the day before, and she showed us some photos. It was a small gator, but swims right up there into the marina, and I guess it's fairly common, so they do have alligators. And then when we left this campground, we had plans to visit Stanley Rehder Carnivorous Plant Garden. And this is in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's just a short drive. I don't really recall, but it wasn't too long of a drive from Carolina Beach State Park. We hit that on our way out to our next stop, and we were able to find trailer parking. There's a church right next. There's a school. It's kind of a garden. It almost feels like a municipality garden in town, but there's a school right there, and then there's a church across the street. We were able to park it in there with no one in attendance at the time of day. And we knew about this garden from my son's carnivorous plant books. It's fairly famous. It features a collection of carnivorous plants, including the Venus flytraps, of course, pitcher plants, and then they also had sundews, or they were supposed to. Well, they did. We found them, but they were advertised as having sundews as well. Not a huge area. I think the garden was probably less than an acre, although there was definitely something going on. I don't know if they're expanding the garden or there's going to be a park built on there. Doing some construction work, park-like construction work off the back of it, and I assume it's somewhat related. But way better than the flytrap trail that we saw at the Carolina Beach State Park. So I would say if you're trying to find Venus flytraps, you can go to Carolina Beach State Park, and I think it's worth it, but plan on going to Wilmington next. So the fun fact about the Venus flytraps, I mentioned this is North Carolina kind of being the only place in the world where they grow naturally. It's actually they grow within this radius, and the sign that they had here at the garden was talking about 75 to 100 mile radius of Wilmington, North Carolina is the only place they grow. We had some prior that we kept in a pot, and we were able to keep them alive a long time in the Venus flytraps, even throughout the winter, and bring them inside. But this is where they're actually growing and thriving in nature, which is pretty cool. And they had a lot of signs, educational information throughout the garden. You can learn little fun facts and things that you may not be familiar with. But I really recommend the stop. I think it's pretty cool, especially, the only place that they grow naturally. I think it's pretty neat. And so we left there to the garden, and we had a Harvest Host stop for the next night to kind of break up our travel. And Harvest Host is, I've mentioned this in some of my prior videos, but essentially is a stop. You usually stop for a day. There's generally no hookups, but you stop at a business that you're a member. We pay about $150 a year to be a member. And there's businesses all over the place, from bowling alleys to movie theaters to golf courses to wineries to museums, a little bit everywhere. Breweries. So we stopped this time at a place called Leland Brewing Company, and on the way there we passed. So we left Wilmington, we headed over. We got to see a pretty cool drawbridge and head over that with nice views, and then we came into Leland, North Carolina, to stay at Leland Brewing Company. It wasn't a huge drive for us. It was just a plan based on our next stop after this, which was going to be at Myrtle Beach State Park. We had a day to break that up with some of our reservations. But the brewing company was a nice little spot. It didn't seem very old. I could kind of tell by some of the concrete work, and obviously the building. I don't think it's been there very long. They had camping in the back for their Harvest Host guests, so you weren't up in the parking lot with all the customers. You had privacy. Its back is a little sandy lot. You just kind of do a U-turn. I think they could probably hold 3, maybe 4 RVs, depending on size. When we had pulled in, it was just us. But then an hour or two later, we had a Class C family pull up, and they stayed for the night as well. But the Leland Brewing Company, as you can expect, is a brewing company. It's a brewery. They had beer and live music when we were there. It may have been, just trying to remember the days back, it may have been a Friday night. And they had yard games like cornhole. They had like plastic throwing stars, if you've seen those, for the kids to throw around, I guess for the adults too, and some other things for the kids to do. There's no food there on site. There's nothing on the food menu, at least as of now, but they did have a food truck or trailer pulled up that was selling different types of grilled cheese and sandwiches. And it seemed like they're building, or they have almost like a container trailer that they've converted into a little outdoor kitchen. It didn't seem to be open yet based on the concrete and some of the guardrails that were laying there, but it seems like they may have food on site more regularly in the future. But nice stop if you're in the area. Leland Brewing Company, Leland, North Carolina, and want to grab a beer or something, or if you want to take advantage of the Harvest Host spot and patronize the business, I think it's worth a stop. Anyway, I'd recommend it. So that's it for the North Carolina side of things. But our next stop, we head over to Myrtle Beach State Park for about a whole week, a little over a week actually. Great beach, Myrtle Beach State Park as expected. Great park, great location. The state park, you're kind of in it. Although you're in the middle of nature, you're not far from civilization, so you have all the outside amenities if you want to do that. But we had a great time, and appreciate you staying in this long, and I'll get the next one out for the Myrtle Beach State Park soon. Thanks.